Hey Toby, welcome. How's it going, man?
Good.
Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Congrats, first of all. Tobiko Data, we'll get into what is Tobiko Data in a second, but you've just launched a massive Series A round. That's awesome news. You must be super proud.
Yeah, it was an exciting time for us.
Congrats, massive congrats.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of quite a few of your open source projects like SQL Glot, SQL Mesh. So tell us, what's the relationship of those open source projects to Tobiko Data, and what's the grand vision?
Sure. So I started SQL Glot as a hobby project when I was at Netflix, and then when I went to Airbnb, I kind of started using it there. And originally, SQL Glot was designed to translate between Spark SQL and Presto SQL because a lot of the big kind of FANG tech companies use both Spark and Presto.
Gotcha.
And they're very different dialects. Now, building this parser out and transpiler, it gave us the power to understand SQL. And so with that, I wanted to build a data transformation framework that really understood SQL and could leverage that to the fullest of the extent, right? And so while I was at Airbnb, I got a demo of dbt.
Yep.
I had actually never heard of it before, and so when I saw that, I just thought of all the potential that there could be with a data transformation framework that fully understood SQL. And so that's where SQL Mesh came.
Because I guess dbt sort of uses a lot of like Ginger templating to stitch everything together, doesn't it? Whereas SQL Mesh, which is the transformational tool equivalent, is kind of like it's just reading raw SQL, isn't it?
So SQL Mesh supports Jinja as well. It also supports dbt projects. So you have an existing dbt project, you can run it as is on top of SQL Mesh, which is really nice. But we did want to have a new kind of macro syntax that was more SQL compliant, so that you didn't have to worry about things like leading and trailing commas with Jinja. But obviously Jinja is pervasive, and so we did want to support that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so how you actually understand that raw SQL code is through SQL Glot. It sort of builds, it's got an AST or something like that.
And so that's really the important part of it. When you have SQL and you render it with Jinja or anything else, after that we can parse that and understand what it means. And so what that gives you is it gives you things like, first of all, syntax checking, so you don't have to wait 15 minutes to do a run and then have the query tell you missed a comma, right? SQL Mesh will tell you that immediately. But more importantly, you get things like column level lineage. Right? So column level lineage is not important just to understand things, but when you're writing code and making changes, you want to understand impact, right? And so with SQL Mesh, when you make a change, before you run anything, before you spend expensive computing resources, we'll tell you, hey, this is going to impact these 20 models downstream. Are you sure you want to do that? Is that expected, right? And that's really the kind of information we want to provide to the developers.
And that comes through as like a Terraform plan style output, so you can just kind of run that expected change set or whatever, and that I felt was a really cool feature as well. That's super awesome. How do you actually, so you've got the column level lineage, and I guess you've got say a concept of a virtual data warehouse and things like that. That all looks really cool. And how do you get started with SQL Mesh if you just wanted to give it a go?
Yeah, it's easy. You can go to sqlmesh.com. You can go to the documentation, go to the quick start, and it's just a simple pip install, SQL Mesh in it, and you're good to go. Awesome.
And so with this Series A announcement, I guess the big grand plan of Tobiko Data is to monetize or build a product around SQL Mesh. So tell us a little bit more about that. I think you mentioned that you've got a cloud offering that's just been launched. Tell me more.
We've always wanted SQL Mesh core to be very powerful and open source. And so our cloud/enterprise offering is an extension on that. It adds new functionality that really enhances the SQL Mesh experience. So first and foremost, one of our flagship enterprise products is SQL Mesh Observer. So we like to say that SQL Mesh understands SQL, and SQL Mesh Observer understands SQL Mesh, right? So it adds a bunch of observability on top of SQL Mesh. So as an example, it adds a new API where you can log any kind of metric you want. So with SQL Mesh, you might want to know, oh, how many rows have I loaded every day? Or how many null values are in my table, right?
Yeah.
And so SQL Mesh Observer allows you to add these kind of new measurements and allows you to track them and do them in a dashboard. And you can log anything you want.
Alerting and monitoring?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wow,
and
that's
so
awesome.
SQL Mesh Observer is going to be one of the first observational tools that not only tells you that something broke, but why it broke, right?
Wow.
Because SQL Mesh Observer understands exactly every commit and every version of SQL. It can really correlate like influxes of anomalies and breakages to the exact SQL code that caused that.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome, and I guess it's like one of those things that you find in big tech where it's kind of like you're working with mission critical data applications, and that's kind of my next question is like, how does SQL Mesh handle scale? Can it handle, like, is it just for startups?
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why we were so excited about building SQL Mesh is because we wanted a data transformation framework that could work at any company, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our founding team came from some of these big tech companies, right? Netflix, Apple, Airbnb, and the amount of data that these companies have is unimaginable to most people. And when we saw like DBT, we knew that it would never work at those kind of companies because like there's an assumption that you can just refresh your warehouse or run an incremental model entirely one shot, right?
Yeah.
That would never work. And so, as an example, we have partition-based incremental models as a first-class citizen, right? Understanding of start date, end dates, intervals, right? Being able to just backfill one day of data at a time or batched intervals. These are key concepts that you need to really handle any scale of data.
For sure, yeah. That does sound amazing. So it's like, like you've got backfills and all sorts of different things so you're not like building tables every day all at once and stuff like that. So that all looks pretty amazing. So, and tell me about the cloud offering. Common gripe in Australia is, we're sort of like a bit forgotten sometimes. Any plans to bring your cloud offering to Australia?
So I assume that if GCP can have an instance in Australia, it will work just fine.
I definitely know we've got a Sydney region, so,
we could probably make that work.
Yeah. So I guess for the Australian and New Zealand audiences, I guess if we drum up enough interest, perhaps we can make it happen.
Yeah, if you have interest, just join our Slack channel at tobikodata.com/Slack and hit us up, and we can give you a demo or. We're very responsive in the community. Yeah,
I've noticed. It's like an amazing Slack channel. So thanks so much. Thanks so much for your massive contributions to the open source community, and all the very best growing out this awesome company, Tobiko Data. Thanks so much, Toby Mao. Cheers.
Thank you.